Alrighty friends, what's up? Welcome back. So it has been almost a week since I've uploaded a video. I think that's the longest that I've gone in probably a year and a half. So I apologize for that, but stuff's been kind of hectic around here and I did give you guys a little warning, so hopefully you understand. But I do want to get some work done on the car today and share a little bit about what's been going on. So I'm gonna do a small task, but it's an important task. And there's one gauge that I think I can get working, which is the oil pressure gauge. So what I did is I splurged a little bit and I ended up buying a new oil pressure sending unit and a new plug. I just didn't really feel like buying one from the junkyard. It wasn't really worth my time this week to go there and scrounge around and try to find one. So we got a new one. We're gonna try to hook that thing up. I did test the gauge already just with like a 12-volt source, and the gauge does work. So I'm gonna try to get this thing hooked up. So the issue with the gauges, if you're not familiar, the car runs on a system called CAN bus. So basically it's a 2-wire system that communicates between different computer modules inside the car. It's not your typical, I'm gonna hook up my sending unit and send it right to the gauge or something like that. So everything on the car runs through basically 2 wires, and there's like an encrypted signal that gets sent from the computer through 2 CAN bus wires, and that's what runs the tach, that's what runs the coolant temp sensor, and a bunch of other stuff in the car. So the oil pressure gauge is not like that, so I'm just gonna hook it up like this. We'll have to figure out the CAN bus stuff later. There's some modules out there that will do the translating. I know Wiring Specialties and LOJ, and there's a couple other manufacturers out there that make CAN bus systems. There's AGT Engineering that I found. I believe they make the module for LOJ and Wiring Specialties. And a company called MRS. I did contact them and they responded. So the guy actually said he watches the videos, so thanks for the response. But there's some programming and stuff that needs to happen in order to make it work for the Nissan stuff. So been kind of working on trying to find some DIY or cheap solutions for CAN bus to share, but it's gonna be pretty difficult to do. So let's get started on this. All right, so we still got all the peppers in the garage. You guys saw this on the last video. My wife's got all this stuff going on. So she's a smart gal, and she kind of stalemated me on this one. So she brought all this stuff in here, and basically she's not gonna get the stuff out of here until I finish the greenhouse. So if you guys are watching some of the other videos, you probably saw a big like shower panel thing. There was a couple guys calling it that. So what happened was she brought all this junk in here and she's like, I'm not gonna move it till you finish the greenhouse. So here we go. We got a greenhouse outside. This is an 8x10, and this thing went together like a sack of shit. And it seemed like it was gonna be pretty straightforward, but it was not. And as you can tell, we're missing a whole bunch of pieces, and all the shit was like labeled wrong. It was, I don't know, some of the labels were mixed up on the panels, and this took like way too long to do this. So I spent a lot of my week fighting with that thing and got it to where it is now. But let's get some work done on the car. All right, so what I'm doing now, I'm just gonna wire this little plug in to some wires that I pulled out of my wad of wires that I have on the workbench. So I'm just gonna twist and tape because that works pretty well most of the time. So this is kind of just doing some extra steps to add the oil pressure stuff because I'm using a P01 from like a 2002, and the harness was also from an earlier year. So this was the harness setup that had the oil pressure switch. So it's just a single wire coming out of the oil pressure switch sensor. So you could definitely not have to do any of this stuff just by having the right year, computer and harness. But I'm gonna wire it all back in because I feel like it. That's what I have. So I'll show you guys what pins I'm planning on using. I'm not even sure if this is gonna work, to be honest, but there's some pins that are not used on the earlier year computers that are used on the later year computers. I'm guessing that the pins are actually active on the board, but they're just not used for anything in the harness during that year, and then later year they're used, because that's how it works for the tach signal. Like the earlier year, pin 10 I believe on the blue plug, uses the tack signal because I think that one goes right to the gauge, and then the later year it's not used and it's just a blank open spot. So I'm thinking that's what's happening, unless they actually did some design changes to the boards. I'm guessing that the pins serve the same functions even though they're not used on the earlier year. So we're going to try that and verify that. And what I'm going to end up doing is using a 5-volt reference from one of the pins that's highlighted on the later year but not used on the earlier year. I'm going to use that one as a 5-volt reference, try that, and then I'm going to use the EGR low reference because I'm not using the EGR, and then I'm going to tie it into the same oil pressure sensor wire that's on the later year computer pinout. That may be a little confusing, but I'll show you guys what I'm doing in a minute. All right, so I got that thing plugged in now to the sensor. And go underneath the fuel rail and come back down and around. And I'm probably just going to leave the wires loose in there for now until I can verify that this actually works, because I'm not quite positive that those pins are even going to work. It's just a hunch, but we're gonna try it and verify it and let you guys know if it works or not. It's one of those things that, like, it works in my head, but it might not work in reality. Should be pretty straightforward though. I mean, a 5-volt reference, a low reference, and a signal. It shouldn't be that scientific. All right, so for my plan here, this is the reference off the P59 computer with the blue-green plug for the oil pressure stuff. So blue plug number 7 is a 5-volt reference, blue 63 is a low reference, and red 58 is the oil signal. So the one I'm using doesn't have that. This is the newer year, like the 99 to 02. So I'm going to use number 7 on the pinout. It's not used, so I'm guessing that that is going to be a 5-volt reference. That's my hunch. And blue 63 is my O2 sensor ground. It's not a low reference. It says O2 sensor ground, which I'm actually still using this one, so I'm not going to use that. But I am going to use the number 23 pin. That's the EGR ground that I pulled out of the harness. I know I'm not using that. And then I'm just going to send the oil signal wire right to the gauge wire. Alright, so 23 down here on the blue plug is going to be my ground. So I'm going to slide that in. Maybe I will go ahead and take this off. I see it coming through here now. Sometimes you can get them to push all the way in with the cap on there, but so this one I'm gonna have to pull off because there's like a little rubber stopper in there, a little plug, like a weather seal. So this one's gonna be the number 7. You can see there's like a little rubber piece in there. I'm gonna try to jam that thing out. Let's see if we can get this in there. All right, got it coming through now. There we go. Now that's in there. So we should have 7 as the, hopefully, low reference, or the 12 volt, 5 volt reference. And then the 23 will be the ground. At least that's what we're hoping for. And then what I'm going to do with the other one is just to run it right up to the oil signal wire. This one, I know the oil signal is this blue, not blue. This one, I know the oil signal wire is this green-red, because I looked in the Nissan service manual, and that's a green-red wire. And I did test it already. I tested it with 12 volts, and it ran the gauge, so ran it wide open. So I'm just gonna use this. I just want to test this first and see if it's gonna work. So I'm just gonna wrap it around this section that I already had stripped. And if everything works, we should get oil pressure. All right, this will be the genuine first attempt here. So if we see good stuff, that's good stuff. Okay, it's showing we have pressure already. So I don't know if that is working, because it's just showing it all the time. Okay, so that didn't work, so I kind of played around with it a little bit, and I took the black wire from the sending unit and I put it into red pin number 20 down here. So red pin 20, and this one is like a low reference for the vehicle speed sensor on the red plug. So I'm not using any of the transmission wiring because it's a manual. You might be able to tap into that and still use it as a low voltage reference, but that's one of the only low reference labels on the pinout. So put that thing in there and let's check it out now. All right, so I'm gonna turn the key forward. We got no oil pressure. Pressure right at 60. I'll give it a rev. So we have a fully working oil pressure gauge. All right, so that's exciting. That's cool. Oil pressure gauge works. Yay. Now I want to go a step farther and see if I can actually hook that same signal up to pin 58 on the red plug. On the P59, that's the oil pressure signal. I want to see if I can actually hook it back up to the gauge and the computer and hook it up to the scanner and actually see if we can log oil pressure. I'm probably not going to do it that way, but I want to see if it works so I can show you guys if it works or not. Alright, so we'll check oil pressure, see if it actually scans. It's reading something, so let's see. Alright, so there you go. It works. It's a P01 computer scanning and logging oil pressure through the same pin 58 on the red plug. Literally all I have is the wire going into the pin 58 on red plug, and it's just kind of tied in. So sensor wire comes right to here and they're just tied together. So pretty simple, but it works. So a lot of you guys are probably thinking like it's irrelevant, who cares, like the computer doesn't need to see oil pressure and nobody really logs oil pressure, but there's a way to do it on those computers if your computer wasn't already set up or your harness isn't set up for a oil pressure sensor. So I kind of just wanted to do it out of curiosity. I knew I wanted to hook up the gauge, but the scanning I didn't really care about. Just wanted to see if it would work, because the computers and harnesses didn't really come with the oil pressure sensor like that until the 03 computers. So I just wanted to see if it would actually work on the 99 to 02 earlier model computers and earlier harness. So wire it in, still works the same. Even though the pinouts show the stuff is not used, it still ends up working on the computer. And that's all I have to say about that.